Do you ever struggle to make fast decisions? Or do your people ever struggle to make fast decisions, especially in times of change? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Avish Parashar. I'm a professional speaker, and I use my over 30-year background studying, performing, and teaching improv comedy to show organizations and individuals how they can use ideas from the world of improv to communicate more effectively, respond to change, and be more creative. And I talk primarily on the improv comedy idea of saying yes and instead of yes but. I wrote a book on this. I have videos on this on my website, a lot of great information. And I talk a lot about how to say yes and to more effectively respond to change, how to embrace it, how to create it, and how to lead it. And in a rapidly changing world, the ability to make fast decisions is critical. I just in the last month did a keynote on this where this is what the client wanted. They said, we want to talk about change, but we want our people to make faster decisions. They get stuck. They get a little paralyzed. They kind of hem and haw instead of making fast decisions. Now, this ability to make decisions quickly is critical for a few reasons. Number one, delays lead to lost opportunities. When you don't make a decision, it's very possible that someone else will come along and make that decision for you. If a client's waiting to hear back from you and someone else swoops in and gives them a proposal, they may just go with the other person. So delays can lead to lost opportunities. Number two, delays can lead to lost productivity. If you're spending time not making a decision, that is time you are not spending acting on that decision, moving forward, getting things done, experimenting, trying things. So the more we delay and put things off, the less productive we are. Finally, and this is specifically if you are a leader, delaying making a decision, delaying being quick can lead to lower morale and confidence that your people have in you because they see you as the leader, putting off making a decision, hemming and hawing, really trying to figure, I don't know. It lowers their morale because they just want you to decide so they can know what to do. And it lowers their confidence in you because they're like, wait a minute, this person's not even doing the thing they're supposed to as a leader, which is make a strong decision. So it's critical, especially in times of change, that you make fast decisions. Now, this isn't the same thing as just being willy-nilly, right? It's not about picking randomly or throwing at a dartboard. But you have to make decisions. And what I find from working with clients is that people struggle, right? They feel paralyzed, especially in times of change. Now, what makes me different from other speakers who talk about this topic is my background in improv comedy. And in improv, it is all about speed, right? It's about being quick on your feet and just coming up with ideas and building a scene right there on the spot with no time to edit or plan. And while the two may seem completely unrelated, like leading my organization through a giant technological change versus making silly improv comedy jokes, but the premise is the same. And what I have found is that an improv comedian who is unwilling to make a strong decision, who is trying to figure out what would be the best, funniest thing for me to do here, or who's got a couple different ideas in their head and they're not really willing to commit to any one because they don't want to cut off the possibility of doing one of the others, so they sort of don't commit in any direction, those are the ones who always do the worst. And the same applies off stage too. The same principles that let an improv comedian perform improv can help you make better, faster decisions in times of change. So I'm going to share 3 ways you can start doing this right now. Number 1 is to shrink the decision, right? We get paralyzed when we've got this giant decision to make and we feel all the ramifications, all the consequences. We're like, I got to make the right choice. Otherwise things could go terribly wrong. Well, yes, and that is what leads to paralysis. So shrink the decision. Make it smaller. Just think in terms of what is my next best step. In my keynotes and workshops, I do a whole exercise about this where I have 2 people work together to tell a story, each just contributing 2 words at a time. And it is amazing the stories they can tell and how quickly they can move through that when all they got to focus on is their one next step. The only decision they need to make is, what are the next 2 words? They don't need to try to decide on, where's the story going to go or what's this whole paragraph going to be. It lets them respond quickly. Now, obviously, those big decisions still need to be made. So what you need to do is break those decisions down. Can you get them into a smaller and smaller and smaller until you can just take one step, one that you can learn from and make a little bit of progress without having to commit to the whole thing right out of the gate. Oftentimes, you will be able to make small decisions that add up to the big one instead of being paralyzed, being unwilling to make a big decision. Second thing you can do, embrace uncertainty. The challenge in times of change is that it makes things very uncertain, right? You've had a system, you've had a routine, things have been a certain way, so you got familiar, but now change has happened, and now everything is very uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. And the paralysis comes from that lack of certainty. When we think of all the different decisions and choices and options we can make, we want to feel a sense of certainty about what's going to happen as a result of that. And many people get paralyzed and refuse to act until they feel like they have a sense of certainty about what is going to happen as a result of their decision. Which, of course, the world being what it is near impossible. And this is doubly true in times of change because everything is changing anyways, so there's really no way of having 100% certainty about what's going to happen based on your decision. So we enter this place where we are fearing uncertainty. What's interesting though, in improv, you learn that the uncertainty, when you step into uncertainty, that's when the good stuff happens. That's when things get creative. That's when you say that surprise joke which makes everyone laugh. That's when an idea pops in your head that moves the scene or story in a completely different direction that no one saw coming and makes it brilliant and delightful and wows the audience. And then I talk about the same principle in my keynotes and workshops about stepping into and embracing uncertainty. And this ties back to the first point of shrinking the decision. You don't necessarily need to jump with both feet into uncertainty, but just take little small steps and realize that's where the good stuff is going to happen, not just in improv comedy, but for you. So if you find yourself hesitating to make a decision or like, I got to make a choice here, pay attention. Am I waiting for certainty? And if you are, just say that mantra, remind yourself, in the uncertainty, that's where the good stuff happens. So embrace it. Don't avoid it. Number 3, make failure okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that failure is good. It's not good. It can be a big problem. It can have consequences, sometimes very serious consequences, right? Sometimes I talk to people who are providing healthcare for people or who are overseeing people's pensions and retirement or whatever. And, you know, if they mess that up, there's huge consequences. So it's not saying that failure is okay. At least not literally. When I say make failure okay, it just means remembering that the fear of failure is paralyzing. So we're not making the consequences of failure okay, but if we're going to take action, we need to not be afraid of failure. Because especially if we're talking about times of change and stepping into uncertainty, there's no guarantee of success. But if you were looking for a guarantee of success before you start, you will be paralyzed. If you realize that, hey, I may fail and life will go on and I can fix it if I fail, then suddenly it lets you make a decision and get moving. And this again ties back into the first point about taking small steps. If you put off making a decision until you're at a point where you need to make this giant decision, then the consequences of failure are much higher. And in that case, failure may not be okay. But if you just think in terms of small steps, then one little step, the consequence of that step failing is probably very low, in which case it makes failure okay. Now, I've talked about big things like healthcare or, retirement pensions. And in those cases, failure you got to be a little bit careful about. But when I say make failure okay, I'm talking about so many of those situations in our life where we overblow the possibility of failure. Like, we don't want to make a decision because we're afraid of failing, but what are we really afraid of? What is the failure? Is the failure, oh, I'm going to look foolish? Is the failure, oh, we may have to backtrack and waste a little time? Is the failure that, oh, a few people are going to be upset at me about this decision? Right? These are the types of things we need to let go of and not worry about. Because if we worry about those things, we're never going to decide. So if we're talking about you yourself making the decision, ask yourself, is this fear real that I'm afraid of when it comes to failure? Or is it imaginary? Is it very not likely to happen? Or am I overblowing the actual consequence of it? Now, if you are a leader, you can also use this to get your people to make faster decisions because they might not want to make a decision because they're afraid of failure and the consequence of failure. So you need to give them permission to make a mistake. And this has to go beyond lip service. You can't just say, oh, you know what? I want you guys to take chances and, you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. And then when they make a mistake, you chew them out and rip them apart. This is very much about creating psychological safety, which I can link to another video I did recently on this topic. But as a leader, if you can create psychological safety and make it safe for people to make the occasional mistake, to make a decision that ends up not working out, they're going to be much more likely to make those fast decisions you really want them to. So that is 3 ways you can start making faster decisions and start getting your people to make faster decisions. I hope you found that valuable. If you did, please just give this video a like and be sure to subscribe. And if you want more information, you can visit my website, avishparashar.com. And if your organization is going through change, or if you have an association conference and you would like me to come and do a presentation or a keynote or a training workshop, either for employees and workers on how they can start embracing change, or for your leaders on then how they can start leading change more effectively and make faster decisions, please reach out and let me know. I would love to chat.